And with that, we are live, which means that we're streaming live from my office to your hopefully big screen TV. I'm really hoping that you're just basically broadcasting this to, like your stadium really at home. Super excited to be here with you all. My name is Kareem Satirli, and I've got two engineers from the Nomad team here. Seth, James, why don't you introduce
Hello.
yourself? Seth goes first.
Hi, yeah, I'm Seth. I'm an engineer on the Nomad team since 2019, sometime around there. Um, yeah, I've done office hours maybe 4 or 5 times now. I'm starting to lose track and happy to be here.
You have definitely been here, and thank you for coming back. It's nice to see a familiar face. Very helpful. James, for the people that don't know you from your HashiCorp talk with a beautiful demo, which we'll link in a second, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone. My name's James. I am an engineer on the Nomad team. I've been here about 2.5 years. I've done a few office hours, but I don't think I've done one with Seth. And I don't think I've done one with you, Kareem. So this is good.
I can confirm both of these things according to our data, and obviously we keep meticulous records of these things. So if you're joining us for office hours for the 15th time or for the first time, keep in mind this is a professional environment. We crack bad jokes. We ridicule mostly me. That's all fair and game. But we try to stay respectful with one another. If you see something in the chat that makes you feel uncomfortable, please let one of us know. Let our moderator know. We've got, I think, Alexandra today moderating in the background. And with that, let's just keep it nice and not cause problems for anyone and have some fun. So, Seth, since you have your mic unmuted, what's new with Nomad 1.3?
That's a great question. Nomad 1.3 came out 3 months ago or something. And I totally don't remember anything that was in there except for native service discovery, which James largely implemented. And then I've been doing some follow-up work on that for the 1.4 release. So just kind of wanted to, walk through some of what we did.
We were going to do here.
Yes, we were going to do a cool demo, and then screen sharing. My terminal doesn't work. I can only do Chrome tabs apparently. So now we get to browse docs together.
Which is also the first part for everyone anyway.
Yeah, that's true. So you can kind of walk through like what people might expect to see. So I'll go ahead and share my screen, I guess. If this works, hopefully.
And I'll pop your screen in as soon as I see it. There we go.
Yep.
The year of Linux on the desktop's not quite here.
Maybe next year. Yeah, so this service stanza, I'm sure many people are familiar with. Historically, always used to register your Nomad tasks into Consul, right? Consul being HashiCorp's service discovery product. And Nomad always had this like really tight integration with Consul. So, you run your tasks in Nomad, register them in Consul, do service discovery through Consul, and life is good. But for Nomad 1.3, we kind of decided one of the complaints we get a lot is that like bootstrapping a usable Nomad cluster in the sense that you have service discovery working is actually kind of difficult when you have like this dependency on Consul beyond like just like running Nomad. So HashiCorp kind of has this motto like we have one binary tools, right? You just run this binary, it does the thing that it says it does, and that's all great. But with Nomad, like you have this dependency on Consul and probably Vault, and it's like more painful than we really kind of wish it were. So now with Nomad 1.3, we have support for native service discovery in Nomad, meaning you don't need Consul for registering services. So basically what we've done, if you can see this, let me make this a little bigger. We have this provider field in a service block. This provider field lets you specify whether you want to register your services in Consul or in Nomad. And if you register it in Nomad, you don't have to use Consul anymore. It's all just inside Nomad state store. It gets replicated across all the servers. You have all these cool just built-in features that you used to need Consul for. So I'm trying to make up on the spot what we should look at because we were going to do a demo, but we can't.
So we actually have a question that comes in a lot about this, which is, I'm currently using Consul. It's too much for the few services that I have in there. Can I use the Nomad service discovery for that? Of course you can. The real question is, what happens when you outgrow that? How hard is it to switch to the Consul one?
Yeah, great question. So if you kind of look at what we were looking at before, this provider, you switch between Nomad and Consul. All the other fields in the service block, basically a subset of these fields works with Nomad, and then all of the fields work with Consul. So if you outgrow Nomad service discovery, you can just basically set this provider field back to Consul, and then first set up your Consul cluster and all that stuff. But then you just register your services that were in Nomad before will be registered in Consul now. So the upgrade path shouldn't be too terribly difficult. For the moment, you can only specify either Consul or Nomad within a task group. So there's not like an in-place dual registering feature yet. I think we were talking about adding that in an upcoming release, but we haven't done that yet. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd personally really like to have that in, because as an operator background, just having that like switch from one straight to another without kind of having the dual registration is a bit scary as an upgrade path. So that would be nice to have.
Yep. So one of the coolest things about the Nomad service discovery is, in my opinion, this new command that Nomad has, basically just Nomad service. And Nomad service has these subcommands, delete info and lists. And this is just kind of like a feature that I always wish Consul had, but still doesn't, which is that you can, Nomad service list and list all of your services. Doesn't sound like much, but oh my gosh, this is so awesome. Like in practice, I use this all the time. And similarly, go back, Nomad service info, as you can imagine, digs deep into like a specific service. So you get all these fields just kind of printed out on your command line right there for you, which is amazingly helpful. I love it. Thank you, James, for writing this. And you can imagine
you're not the only one that loves it. Straub's just fan happily about that there's no dual registering yet, but having both in the end will definitely help with the upgrade path. And that's actually a great lead into one bit that we always talk about during community office hours. We build products based on the feedback we get from you. If you use this and you run into something, let us know. GitHub issues, you can find us on Twitter, drop me a message, talk to us at a conference. We'll be at HashiCorp. You should definitely register for that. There's some really, really sweet Nomad stuff coming. I've seen a couple of the previews of the talks. There is some beautiful IoT and edge stuff coming your way that's worth checking out. But yeah, so if you have feedback, let us know, because we can build better products if we know what it is that you want.
Yep, absolutely. Speaking of what you want, one of the things that someone suggested was kind of having a built-in load balancing with Nomad service discovery, which I totally just now remembered is a thing. So if we look at the template stanza, if you scroll all the way down, we buried this pretty well. So we have, first of all, support for Nomad services with regard to Nomad services in the template stanza, right? So it's just Nomad services here. You range over like whatever services you're looking for. You can see this range clause right here. You have my app, and you just pick out like the address and the port and whatever you need. So that's cool. But we also have simple load balancing with Nomad services. So this is kind of a clever use of rendezvous hashing, which is the general form of random weight hashing, which basically just takes a unique but consistent key, basically per service, and uses that key to assign whatever upstream service you're looking for, right? So if I want one Redis service out of a cluster of Redis services, but I don't want to like reconnect to that Redis service every time my template stanza runs, I can use this feature to use random weight hashing to get assigned a Redis consistently, even across like the Redis group being updated, adding, removing Redis instances. The cool thing about rendezvous hashing is that there's only like a 1/n chance that I get reassigned a different Redis, which is really cool. So yeah, check this out if you're looking for simple load balancing. If you're looking for advanced load balancing, we have more news. Traffic, our good friends over here, now have a built-in Nomad service provider. So it's extremely similar to the Consul catalog provider that has existed for years. If you can imagine, the code was copied and pasted in a lot of renaming. So all the features are basically there that you would expect. Yeah, you can plug Traffic directly into Nomad Service Discovery now, which is excellent.
I think excellent is the right way to describe that. We have tons of people excited. I think Charlie put it well. So stoked for all this new hotness. And of course, Strops is trolling us a little bit with being especially excited for Redacted, which is definitely one of my favorite features as well. We'll share a link for the load balancing with Traffic tutorial in the show notes as well, because it is really as simple as following a handful of steps and enjoying that. James, what has you excited?
Well, I would say service discovery because that's cool. So something else that came in 1.3 was some work around how we treat allocations and nodes that are disconnected from the cluster, but that we expect to be disconnected. So Derek did the majority of the implementation work on this. It seems a simple thing. Hey, I want this node to become, or this allocation to become disconnected rather than lost. But there's a lot of changes that had to happen on the servers to handle this. And effectively, what it allows operators to do is to specify that your job, your task group, you expect allocations to be running on a node that is prone to disconnect. So that might be because it's running distant from your servers. It might be, in unstable networks. Maybe you're running it remotely in a farm, an example. So even, remote game servers, you want your game server to run as close to your user as possible, right? You don't want 500 ping when you're playing a first-person shooter because, not the best experience. So this allows you to specify that, hey, if that node disconnects, don't just assume those allocations are in a bad state. We expect that to happen. And when that node reconnects to the cluster, we don't take destructive action like we would do normally. So normally the allocations will be considered lost. If that node rejoined, we would either destroy the allocation or we would at least restart the tasks. So restarting the application running. With this feature enabled, you can specify, hey, these allocations, when they come back online, don't restart them. Prefer those over any replacements. And so, kind of any end user that you're using the application that's running within inside that allocation isn't really going to have any impact. They're not going to notice it, which is really nice, really cool.
I think what was really cool is when you demoed this at HashiConf EU, and as promised, we'll have a link for that up in a second. You showed us a pretty sweet demo. It is exactly that, right? Sometimes latency is acceptable, sometimes it isn't, but you need a system that can handle both situations. For HashiConf Global, we have a session where one of our community members is talking about how they deal with latency across vast ranges. It's not the traditional type of farming, but it's worth it. I'm teasing that session so hard because it is so good. The stats that we've seen have been inspiring, especially when then somebody tells you that this is not actually running in the cloud. These gigahertz, sorry, these yes, I think it was hundreds of gigahertz. Well, sorry, yes, hundreds of gigahertz and several terabytes of memory. Wouldn't inspire anyone, right? Like, it's a normal thing. And then somebody tells you, well, the machines are all limited to at most 4 gigabytes of memory. So do the math here. It's going to be good. 3 more weeks.
It is. And one of the nice things that this feature in particular kind of helps in the operational sense is that you don't have to have multiple clusters, so maintain multiple state stores to handle these different use cases. You can create kind of a single cluster that can handle multiple situations. So you can have a core, your core workload running inside your data center, and then you can have this remote work, and it can all still be a part of one cluster, which makes the operational overhead a lot easier. You don't have to manage server farms here, there, and everywhere, and how do you monitor it at all? It's quite nice from that perspective.
Seth agrees silently. There's so much good stuff coming. One of the questions I got on the side, if you're that person, feel free to ask them in the YouTube chat, in the LinkedIn chat. We're here. Ask us the questions live. You don't need to Slack DM me. Is what has happened to Nomad that there's so much renewed energy? It feels like a different Nomad from a year ago. It's a very loaded question, but I'm still going to ask it. Seth, your face color is suggesting that you have an opinion on this.
Well, there's a series of events within HashiCorp that kind of happened. Not sure how much we're supposed to go into it, but basically, a lot of people quit in late-ish, mid to late 2021, last year. Yeah. Basically, the project wasn't looking great for reasons, nothing to do with Nomad open source or Nomad Enterprise as you know it. But basically, that was kind of a wake-up moment where the leadership around Nomad got reoriented around focusing on what would make Nomad as you know it actually successful, right? So Nomad historically kind of has this reputation of being like the second-rate Kubernetes, the number 2 orchestrator. And I think what we realized is we need to focus on what makes Nomad great and like actually iterate on those aspects rather than trying to be like the next cloud provider orchestrator. So like the features we've just talked about, Nomad Service Discovery and disconnected clients, all that stuff, it's focused really around like the edge use case where operators would want to like run Nomad on bare metal in their clusters, next to their users. And like, I think it was very motivating to be given the freedom to focus on the features that actually needed focus. And so some people came back to HashiCorp, right back to the Nomad team where we were. And like the development velocity since then has been super high. Like you just need to look at the changelog for the past 6 months or whatever to like, it's very obvious. Like there's a lot of interest in Nomad right now. So yeah, it's kind of where that came from.
I think that's a beautiful answer. As you can see, we're not necessarily looking for the polished, politically correct answer. We're looking for real answers. Software gets built by humans, and we like to build software that makes sense. One thing I'm excited about is just being able to run it wherever I need to. Raspberry Pi Zero, if you don't burn it out because of other things you're doing, not a problem. Heavily constrained industries where you simply don't have the power to run, even something as small as an Intel NUC. Nomad shines at that. And I think with the edge stuff and the disconnected client logic that we now have in there, the only thing that troubles me about that is that sometimes my CPU graph doesn't show what the CPU was doing, but that's because it was disconnected. So that's fine. It's the energy here as somebody who's using the tool is very inspiring.
Yeah, and if I can expand on my answer. Sorry, James. Basically, what the renewed vision enables is when I come to work, I am now working on the orchestrator that I want to use in my next job. That is the most motivating thing I can think of to work on. And that's kind of like, I was one of the people that left HashiCorp and came back after 6 months when I found out what the new vision was. This is awesome. I want to be here and work on this now.
I think that's really it, right? You want to work on tools that don't feel like a chore to work on. I mean, it doesn't mean that software engineering never has any chores. Backporting stuff, 3 versions will never be joyful in any context. But that notwithstanding, building something where you get feedback from the community telling you, hey, this is what we need, this is what we see. Customers that run thousands and tens of thousands of clients and see a scale that we can simulate, that gives fodder for its sustenance for the next 3 versions of Nomad. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, it's been I found the past year super fun. I've really enjoyed it, which is slightly weird for a whole year enjoying doing the same thing. But it's been nice we've been able to have a bit more influence potentially on the roadmap than we may have done in the past, which has been really nice. Yeah, just echoing what Seth said. Without the leaving and coming back, it's been really good to work on. And yeah, I've used Nomad in the past, but I definitely see myself, next job running Nomad in my production environments, but at home as well. At home, it's always been a bit of a weird one to try and run, on a small setup, just because of the constraint overhead if you want service discovery secrets. And that's something that, the service discovery is really solving quite nicely, because I don't have to have that extra overhead with more powerful machines. I can have the real basic kind of machine, and it gets by really nicely.
Which, your home lab is usually, I think we had a podcast yesterday where we talked about this. Your home lab is usually underpowered. It's the machines that you get somewhere, that laptop that you didn't have to send back, and seems to work fine with some Wi-Fi stuff. So you're constrained on that sense, but it also helps you shape the future of the product, because obviously if you know which things you're running into in your home lab, you're going to polish those away.
Yeah, actually, sorry, go ahead.
And I was going to make some throwaway comment about the price of electricity in Europe. So
no, I was just going to say, I run a handful of websites on my own $5 a month DigitalOcean VPS, and I've got the whole HashiStack on this one node with, I think, 0.5 gig of RAM and 1 core, and it all works, right? It's super nice. It's a great way to kind of dog food a lot of the Nomad features that are coming out.
It's mostly that, and I think especially with new features, like template rendering. For me, I think the biggest change in the last year was Nomad Pack. Writing job specs is okay. Writing them in Nomad Pack is, I don't know, it clicks more for me, and it allows me to express myself in a way that I consider myself Terraform native. So that aligns better with that, which is great, because the more stuff I can pack up, whatever the verb is that we'll eventually use, is stuff that others get to reuse, which I think is very important.
Yeah, Pack. We'll hopefully be investing a bit more time in that again soon. Yeah, I found it super useful to be able to write templates that can be used again and again. It's something I hold dear to my heart, and I see good value in it going forward for kind of any scale of user. Whether you have your internal templates as a enterprise or whether you share them across a community.
I just want to point out that was a huge understatement. James is the author of Levant. If any of you have ever used that, Pack is kind of like the reimagination of the next generation of packing Nomad jobs.
So on the topic of jobs that you have to work on, what's coming with 1.4? What are we excited about?
I don't know, James. What have you been working on?
No. No. Well, the thing I'm going to talk about the thing I'm super excited about, which is what Seth's been working on, which is adding health checks into our native service discovery offering. Because we weren't supporting that. If you wanted health checking, you had to go to Consul. So if Seth wants to talk more about that, that's what I'm super excited about.
Sure. So yeah, we just talked about Nomad services. They now support checks, basically, starting off with HTTP and TCP checks. Basically, all the functionality that you have with Consul checks is there with Nomad now, including check restart, which was a bear to implement. So you're welcome. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. Get to monitor the state of your Nomad services now.
I think anything that helps us get more insights is a good feature to have.
And there's a super, super cool UI coming with that.
Oh, yeah. The UI around services and service checks now is going to be super slick. I'm so excited about that. Yeah, good call out. I would demo it, but demos don't work. So,
I mean, we can definitely give it another try while James talks about more features. Try to see if you can get the Nomad UI up in the browser, because I think that worked. Just gonna put you on the spot.
Yeah,
it's also
I'll
good
do that in the background.
That helps our audience understand that this is not pre-recorded; it's all live, which makes this more legit.
And I guess something else, while Seth figures that out, is we've got some improvements coming around the ACL system. Not as exciting as the other ones potentially coming, but useful. So in particular, that's adding ACL roles as kind of like a meta object into the ACL subsystem, so you can compose multiple policies into a role. And then you can create tokens based off of roles and policies, a mix of the two, or either or. And as well, token exploration. So up until now, you'll create a token, and that lifetime was as long as the token had until it was deleted by, an administrator. What this can do is you can create a token with an expiry time on it. You can say, hey, I want this token to be usable for 1 hour. And after that time, the token will expire. It won't grant you any more permission, and then it will be cleaned up automatically by Nomad. So it's kind of should be quite useful.
Useful. And Daniel, who's watching us on LinkedIn, asks, can we ask questions? Yes, you can. Please go right ahead. Ask them on LinkedIn, ask them on YouTube. We will happily try to answer them or get back to you with the long form answer if it's that kind of question. Meanwhile, Shantanu has an interesting hot take. Will we eventually get a single binary which has Consul, Nomad, and Vault functionality all in one? I have a feeling that's a no, because that would be a silly big binary.
Not the full functionality, of course. You know, as much as we talk around how we're cramming more features into Nomad as well, Consul, you know, as service discovery, service mesh does have a place, and our integrations with Consul are being worked on and continue to be the best in class. So yeah, you know, I don't think it will include all of that functionality. There is a potential interesting 1.4 feature coming in that people are probably going to be pretty excited about, which is called Nomad variables. And so this is a way where you can store some configuration rights and variables configuration for your tasks in Nomad itself. And so that kind of, you know, is a nice way to be able to get Nomad running quickly and get some configuration to your application. And along with that, there was a load of work done around workload identity so that we can kind of introduce your work, your tasks to the variables in a secure manner. And so that's going to be really exciting to see how that kind of enables us moving forwards, because that was a pretty big undertaking of work, but it opens up a lot of doors for us moving forward. And I'm excited about everything, and I can't decide whether it's that or the service health checks, both on par. They're both going to be pretty cool to play with.
Good thing is you don't have to choose. Daniel, thank you for asking a question. I started to use Nomad just 3 to 4 months ago and moved from Kubernetes. So my question is there any analog to the Kubernetes stateful set, or is there any plans to add it? Seth, you're on mute.
I forget, what does stateful set do?
I'm Googling it now as well.
Is that the one where it's like persistent host volumes? In that case, yes. They are called, yeah, you can use, well, it depends on what you're trying to do. So we have like volume mount. So you can kind of pre-declare a volume on a node that you want for tasks to make use of when they get launched. And then when you go to schedule them, they'll have that in their job spec and automatically get launched on nodes to have that volume mount and mount them, and all your stuff will be available. I know there's like a migrate stanza that gets used somewhere. I've never used it myself. I don't really want to answer how that works. I don't know, James, if you've used it.
Yes, this is taking me back. I used to run Cockroach DB on Nomad, and so we tried to use. There's, I think it's in the, I can't remember what stanza it is, but there's a sticky parameter, so you can say sticky true, which tries to start your allocations on the same node, so you have access to data. But if the allocation can't and it's moved somewhere else, Nomad makes the best effort to try and migrate that data onto the new client. So yeah, that would be one thing, I think. Sorry, Seth.
Yeah, sorry, it's ephemeral disk set on your group. So you have the migrate and sticky setting so that your alloc makes a best effort attempt to stay on the same machine and migrate otherwise, yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of the demo, I don't know how to build the UI, and even if I did, I don't think I have like Yarn and all that other stuff, so I can't demo it right now.
I guess then the only solution here is that we'll have a future office hours where we're going to talk about those features. Meanwhile, I've shared a link to the ephemeral disk configuration, so Daniel, you should be able to find some information there. It's a great question. I like this. We also have a Nomad Kubernetes cheat sheet that we should get in the links just to help you out, figure out how to map primitives from one system to the other, which is something that's useful.
Yeah, and kind of expanding, Nomad also supports CSI, right? The container storage interface. So any like whatever EC2's thing is, like, or whatever cloud provider you're using, like if they have a CSI driver, you should be able to use that and get persistent storage that way if you like.
Yeah, it's I kind of weirdly was playing with the EBS CSI driver yesterday to update some documentations, and it works really smoothly. I haven't really played with CSI a huge amount, and it was really nice. So I believe we have a learn guide about that. I'll find a link, and so if you're interested in that kind of thing, definitely have a run through that.
And we also have a handful of Nomad packs available to help you around CSI workflows. So definitely check them out in the community registry. There's one in there for EFS, the Elastic File Storage from AWS. Works beautifully. It looks intimidating at first, but it wraps it exactly how you would expect it to. Worth checking out. And if you use CSI with Nomad or Nomad Pack through that workflow, let us know what you're building. You can talk to us, I want to say confidently, and because we're not here to record these and share with the community. Your insights help us envision solutions to problems you might be having, or paths that for you might be like, oh yeah, we've solved this, like by coding it this very specific way, because Nomad doesn't support something in the way you need it to. While your workaround might be a great solution, you might not be the only person running into this. So if you share that feedback with us, maybe we'll see enough interest in a certain feature that we'll work on it. Edge computing being one such case. The trouble of needing different HashiCorp products for a small scale Nomad setup when it doesn't necessarily make sense. Doesn't mean that Vault is not the right solution for you. It just may mean that for your home lab, maybe you don't need it. And in that sense, it's beautiful when you have alternative options available. And good point from Charlie that we should definitely get on screen because I think, Daniel, you asked a question on LinkedIn, so you might not see Charlie's comment. The only real big gotcha on ephemeral disk migration is that your allocations are blocked during the time it takes to migrate. It's good. I don't like writing to a disk that I'm trying to migrate at the same time because you never know what you're getting. Though it is a fun thing to make data disappear. If you tend to override write protection, definitely do some chaos engineering around that. And let us know. We have Hashi Talks coming up where you can share your horror story of what went wrong when you ignored write protection. Yeah, so as you can see, we answer serious questions here with a little bit of ridicule, just to help you understand that sometimes these choices are made for a good reason. But let me see what other comments we have.
I saw Daniel asked about the Ceph storage, and I believe if you go to the Nomad repository, I can check this actually before I tell you a lie. I believe we have Ceph examples within there, so I think you should be good. I'll just double check.
I don't like Ceph because it sounds too much like Ceph, and I always get confused.
That is definitely a good way of making technical choices. I like this. I have the same. Somebody's called with a similar name, it just doesn't work.
We do have a demo of that. So if you go to the Nomad repository under demo CSI, you'll find one you're looking for.
Beautiful. So github.com/HashiCorp/Nomad and check it out there. Daniel, yes, Ceph, indeed. I'm just gonna keep that up there until one of you comes up with something better to put up there. Actually, sorry, we actually have a question So Shantanu asks, does Nomad plan to get declarative syntax for job and group level dependencies that doesn't require service registration and its lookup?
So a DAG. I mean, I think if this is the kind of thing I'm thinking around, kind of have dependencies between task groups, or even jobs, it's something we get a fair amount, I think. And we discuss it. I think it probably comes up in conversation internally, you know, once or twice a month. We don't have any solid plans for it right now because just it's quite out of the way compared to how Nomad currently runs jobs. Particularly if you just get down into the scheduling level, the scheduler has no notion of that kind of linking. And so it would be quite a fundamental change to the scheduler, and just the reconciliation logic that we have in general.
Yeah, and to add on top of that, like there are other tools that do, you know, dependency of jobs for you very well. Well, like I've used Airflow kind of extensively, and it's purpose built for that problem. Nomad is purpose built to be like a task orchestrator, as in orchestrating across machines, services, long-lived services, or batch jobs. The whole DAG processing pipeline is, I think, better served by tools like Airflow or Kubeflow or what have you.
Using the right tool for the job is, I think, is always the hardest choice to make, right? Because let's be honest, you know, like you use Terraform, you use Nomad, you have tons of plugins for both that will make everything work in that workflow. But sometimes that might not be the best solution. Terraform is not the best option to order your pizza at Domino's. And maybe, you know, like
but people have done it. That's the important thing.
that is the important thing. Yes, we as humanity, we've advanced to that point where you can do that. And it is a beautiful thing, despite being region locked to the US. So James and I, we will forever not enjoy this feature. Turns out multi-continent infrastructure as code is still very hard. But yes, you know, things like Airflow, purpose-built tools will always outshine general tools. That being said, could you work around these workarounds by building a specific task driver that exposes the right things from Airflow to Nomad and makes it more manageable? Or are we trying to basically square a hole and round peg the solution here?
I think it would be outside of the task driver. I don't think it would have enough knowledge of what's going on.
Yeah, the task driver, when that code gets invoked, like that task is already, I mean, it's being launched. That's the whole point of the task driver. So if you're trying to like schedule across different groups, which may be allocated on different machines, like it's already too late. Any kind of DAG processing would have to be done in Nomad Scheduler, which it simply isn't designed to do at this time.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I thought there was a repo of someone that had kind of quite a simple but effective kind of external tool that would monitor allocations and jobs and kind of do the right thing as in terms of kind of like tweaking the API and, you know, running the next stage, running the next job. I can't remember what it's called though.
And certainly, like one thing you could do that would be tasks are designed to be run as Nomad jobs or whatever, you can set them up as dispatch jobs and then just have Airflow trigger those. I've done that, works well.
And so if you're running into these things, it's always good to check out the docs. And for that, you might want to head on over to developer.hashicorp.com/nomad, where we have our new developer docs available. Also for our other tools, but obviously this is Nomad office hours, so that's what you need. Meanwhile, how would people get started with building their own task driver?
Great question. I just started building one myself. There's a example task driver, like literally designed to be forked and then edited to do whatever you need. Yeah, James has got a link for it. That is excellent if you're okay with kind of the built-in, provided for you way of doing things. So there's like this executor.executor interface that gets implemented, and the skeleton driver does like a very basic example of, you get to configure what shell you want to use to print like a string that you specify. A very basic example, but it works, and it's actually cross-platform, and it actually makes use of like Linux C groups features if you're on Linux. Very nice starting point. So yeah, definitely take a look at that to get started. And then if you really want to dive into the deep end, you can just look at the source code for Nomad's built-in test drivers. So if you're doing, if you're only doing stuff on Linux, you can take a look at the libcontainer executor in Nomad, which makes use of libcontainer run C under the hood. If you're doing Docker stuff, you can look at the Docker test driver, obviously. I believe we basically just make use of Docker client, like a third-party Docker client, actually, just for legacy reasons. But it's actually pretty straightforward, if not extremely verbose. There's a lot of stuff involved in launching a container, actually. But yeah.
Plenty of task drivers to check out. We do have the plugin authoring guide also on nomadproject.io. You can start there, head on over to the repository that we shared in the notes, and of course, check out the community-supported task drivers. We've got Firecracker, many more LXCs in there, definitely.
Yeah, actually, I would call out the Containerd task driver from Roblox. It is actually super straightforward. Like you read the code and it all makes sense. It's actually, that was the kind of the code I was looking at when I started with mine. Yeah, I would definitely look at that.
That is definitely a great call out. Easy enough to find with the links that we shared. We're not trying to bombard you. Worth checking out, well maintained. It's a respected organization building it, so you're not just trusting some rando on the internet. I know we sometimes run into that with development of ecosystem plugins. Check it out and see what you can learn from that driver, or just use it. And yes, Matthew, HashiCorp is in 3 weeks-ish. What are you two excited about, Seth, James?
Going forward?
Well, HashiCorp, but yes, in
HashiCorp?
general.
I don't get to go to HashiConf this year, so I guess I get to watch it.
I know Lewis is talking about Nomad past, present, and future. Should be exciting to see that. Community members talking about how they use Nomad in an edge deployment setup. We've hinted at that about 3 times now because it is so good. James, what are you excited about?
I'm particularly excited about that. The edge use case. Getting that snippet earlier was interesting, and seeing the customer and the community presentations on how they actually use Nomad, I always find really interesting. Kind of give some values, probably a bit kind of wavy, but it's nice to see someone utilizing something that you're working on and to see how it is actually working for them, because it can give us feedback on things that both aren't working so well, but kind of validation around things that we've done which are good. So I find those interesting. But yeah, won't be going, which is sad. It's always nice to talk to people in the community, but it's a bit of a way it's a long way. And I went to HashiConf VU, so that's fine.
And you got to play Doom on screen, which I think was a pretty good demo. It worked well. Yeah, a couple of interesting sessions at HashiCorp Global. Nomad involved in the post-Kubernetes world from Cosmonic. SeatGeek is talking as well, speaking even. Words are hard right now for many reasons. But that notwithstanding, there's going to be great content for all of our products. So check it out. If you can't join in person, like some of us, join virtually. We'll have streams available for the most important and most interesting sessions, and of course, everything afterwards for you to consume at your leisure. Because let's be honest, when there's 2-3 sessions going on at the same time, you know you're losing out on something. And who even has the time to enjoy all the sessions anyway?
Well said.
I try. And then, nice. Shantanu has an interesting idea for something. Oh, very important before we dive into that. Charlie will be at the Nomad booth, so definitely stop by. Charlie loves questions about Raspberry Pis and compiling Nomad from source, especially on the zeros. So I think that's a good thing to talk to him about. And then in terms of demo ideas, showing IoT devices from buoys in the ocean somewhere, yeah, that would be the edge, right? Especially if we're taking like the medieval representation of Earth, or the ocean is the end of the Earth. That's
One of
the
the
actual
one of the
edge.
terms I heard while Disconnected Client was being worked on was the submarine use case. So you can read into that what you will.
Yes, I believe that's what Redacted was for before.
I like that idea of demo though. That'd be super cool. Running Nomad as your distributed weather monitoring and data collection software.
And here I was hoping you would talk about how you would use Nomad on your submarine.
Unfortunately, I don't have one of those handy to test on. But if you know one around, I'm more than happy to do that.
But these use cases, jokes aside, these use cases are fun. If you're doing IoT stuff, specifically, find me on Twitter, find me somewhere. I'm Kareem at HashiCorp.com. I'm doxing myself here. Let me know what you're building with Nomad and IoT use cases. Nomad if it's narrowband or LoRa, especially if it's LoRa. I'm very interested in how you're dealing with the constraints there, not the constraints stanza, but the constraints of having not a lot of bandwidth, but potentially a lot of data that you need to get from A to B, and how you do the processing. And maybe we can inspire some new features or fix bugs that you might be running into. What are your weekend projects?
My weekend project? I can show. If I share my screen again. Let me get this set up real quick.
I think that use case of dropping a few buoys in the sea with some LoRa sensors on there, like James said, collecting weather data and then bringing that back. Yeah, sounds like a good hackathon project.
Yeah, so I don't know if my screen is sharing right now. Yeah, so this is kind of what I've been working on recently. So this kind of started as a mini hackathon project at a kind of team offsite, and over time adding features and kind of getting it to work better and better. But yeah, going back to implementing your own task driver, this is what I've been working on. It is Nomad Pledge Driver. So a while back, there was this post from Justine Tooney, who's kind of famous for making the actually portable executable stuff. But they've got basically this system call from OpenBSD called Pledge, and also Unveil, also from OpenBSD. And together they give you kind of this really nifty sandboxing, or way of doing process sandboxing without like all the container stuff. So it still uses seccomp BPF under the hood, but it exposes that kind of security in a much more approachable way, I would say. So Unveil, for example, lets you be able to just specify which file system paths you want to be able to, for your task to access. It's just like literally just a list of directories or files. And then the pledge half, that system call, lets you specify which system calls you want your tasks or processes to be able to access. So like stdio lets you read and write to file descriptors 1 and 2. wpath lets you write to actual files. Proc lets you fork processes. And by like announcing which promises you're going to allow your task up front, if someone like gets an RCE on your task and tries to do crazy stuff to your cluster, they won't be able to. They'll be limited to only what your task has already pledged when it first started. So yeah, that's what I've been working on. I think it's kind of cool.
I agree. Anything that extends the common use cases that we see in the docs with, well, anything that's security infused, I think is a good setup to have. James, how's your Doom running scenario going? Doom the game, not the other Doom.
Honestly, I haven't really played with that since HashiCorp. So that's a shame. I mean, as someone that plays games on custom servers online, I kind of toyed with the idea. So I do racing games, and so I did toy with the idea of trying to use that example code to go forward and have kind of a site that was able to run dedicated games for league racing. But time, man, you know what it's like. And there are already very good services around for doing that. Kind of the thing that I have been mostly working on in any kind of spare time I've been having is just something to aid debugging Nomad clusters. So that's kind of been where my little time has been going, apart from the project work and just kind of the more day-to-day focus stuff. It's not external anywhere, I don't believe.
I mean, with all the new features and quality of life improvements that are coming out, it is hard to imagine where you would find any time to work on anything else. I'm excited. I was just going through the changelog of all the things that have been published. Well, sorry, published in the changelog, but obviously have been available in main for a while longer. It's 3 pages just since HashiCorp EU. Too much for us to summarize in an hour, and we're almost at time. So definitely just check out the Nomad changelog on GitHub. It is worth it. You'll find some inspiration on new things that you could be doing and trying out maybe some bug fixes for things that you've been running into. Software is built by humans. Humans make mistakes, even with the best formatting tools. So give 132 a run, and let us know what you're running into. And sorry, 135. Wow. Yes, 2 minutes to go. So give 135 a run, and let us know what you're most excited about. And then stay tuned, because something else is coming eventually.
Well, we've got the 1.4 beta coming out in the next day or so. So give that a try. Let us know what's broken.
Yes. And when it says beta, that means don't run it in production, at least as far as our official guidance goes. But if you do, let us know what breaks. Helps us, and it helps you.
Yeah, and if there are features that you're looking for or bugs that you find, please, go to the repo, raise them, or if the feature request already exists, give it a thumbs up, because that's useful for internal road mapping. And if you have any questions, we've got the Discuss forum. So that's a good place to raise kind of more general questions around Nomad usage if you're not sure about how a particular feature works, or have questions around integrations. That's a perfect place for that kind of thing.
Excellent. With that, I would say thank you both for coming back for office hours. I'm excited for 1.4 and for seeing you all back soon. Thank you to our audience. Beautiful questions. I love the excitement around all the new stuff that's coming out and all the stuff that we should be building. It keeps us honest. So thank you for that. Seth, any closing words from you?
No, just thank you for hosting, and thanks for everyone who tuned in. Good to see everyone here.
Indeed. James, drop some
No,
knowledge.
thanks to you, Kareem. And to everyone watching, thank you. Be nice to each other.
Beautiful words to end on.